Okay, we're at nearly the end of our Pie Martin's glass story, which is the mystery of the hidden gold. It's getting quite exciting. The kids are stuck in a boat trying to escape from Fox and not sure if they're going to make it. All right, chapter 20, the ghost ship. Crack! The bullet whizzed past Jack's ear. Emily's hand flew to her mouth as Scott grabbed Jack and yanked him into the bottom of the boat. I was wrong, Scott muttered. He'd only used 3 rounds. The first shot he took didn't work, remember? The bullet jammed in the magazine, but it didn't fire. Jack, are you okay? Jack put his hand to his ear. It was still there. Yes, he was okay. In fact, he felt strangely elated. That bullet had his name on it, but it had missed its target, and by all calculations, Fox was now out of ammo. Jack had cheated death and lived to tell the tale. He was tempted to wind Scott and Emily up by pretending his ear had been shot off and his brains were spilling out, but he knew he didn't have time for messing around. He sighed. What a waste of opportunity. Yeah, I'm fine. Just double check your figures next time. If you want my ears pierced, I can think of a better way to do it. Emily laughed with relief. She shone the torch back at Fox. He had discarded the gun and was running down the beach. As she watched, he plunged into the waves. I don't believe it. He's swimming after us. Scott grabbed the oars and began to row again. Emily glanced ahead. Look out, she shouted, now directing the torch towards a row of snaggy-toothed rocks poking up out of the water. The waves were tossing the boat towards them. Scott pulled Gemini clear with just an oar width to spare. In the torch's narrow beam, Emily picked out the lonely figure of Simon Fox thrashing through the waves towards them. He was clearly a strong swimmer. Faster, Jack urged. He's gaining on us. We can't, Emily cried. It's like an obstacle course with these rocks. And my arms are killing me, Scott groaned. Jack swapped places and took the oars. Emily arched the torch back and forth like a searchlight, the searchlight lighting the way ahead and checking Fox's progress. He was so close now, she could see his face when he looked up from the water. He's going to catch us, she thought. But then, all of a sudden, he was gone. A rogue current must have dragged him down beneath the waves, or a shark. Emily's fevered imagination was starting to take over. He's vanished, she shouted. We can't let him drown. Well, we'll have to go back and help. But what if he attacks us again? No, there he is, Scott cried, directing her hand with the torch. Fox's head had popped back up into the trough between 2 waves. Emily shivered. He seemed to stare right into her eyes before he turned and started swimming slowly back towards Gulliver's Island. He's given up, Scott exclaimed in relief. Welcome to the real world, mate, Jack shouted after the retreating figure. They rowed on through the night. The lights of the castle quay village twinkled on the other side of the bay, but they didn't seem to be getting any closer. Scott tried not to think about the Empress and all the other ships that had foundered on the rocks in the bay and were now lying on the seabed, full of skeletons many fathoms below. Emily had tried her mobile phone, but there was still no reception. Scott could tell she was worried about her parents. They'd be frantic by now. It was dark, and Gemini was missing. Aunt Kate had probably noticed the boys were late home too. Should we send up an emergency flare? Jack asked. Yeah, no, maybe, I don't know, Emily murmured. Scott looked at Jack. Emily was many things, but indecisive wasn't one of them. They've never known her not to have an opinion before. She must be in a seriously bad way. They made her drink some water and nibble at one of the biscuits they'd packed, but she was still weak and exhausted. Scott grabbed the waterproof bag and started looking for a flare. Hang on, what's that? Jack shouted. A massive great rock, dead ahead. But it wasn't a rock. The silhouette of a sailing boat loomed out of the night and dark and deserted as a ghost ship. The torch beam illuminated a flag with the purple and yellow circles flying from the mast. It's the green Dolphin, Scott cried. Fox's boat. Oh yeah, Jack shouted. I say we board this vessel and claim it for our own. Scott nodded. We can use the radio to call the Coast Guard. Scott and Jack tied Gemini alongside the Green Dolphin and dog-handled Emily and drift up the stepladder into the small cabin. Jack made Emily as comfortable as possible with her foot propped up on the seat. He found a cool box and extracted a cold water bottle, which he placed gently under her ankle. Then he wrapped her in a blanket. Meanwhile, Scott found the radio. He checked the instruction chart displayed on the wall, and scrolled through the channel to channel 16, the emergency frequency. You have to shout Mayday, 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 Jack said. No, Emily said. That's only if we're about to sink. Scott scanned the information and found what he was looking for. Coast Guard, Coast Guard, Coast Guard, he said in the transmitter. This is Green Dolphin, Green Dolphin, Green Dolphin. We're anchored off Gull Island. While they waited for the lifeboat to arrive, Scott switched on the white warming light at the top of the mast to prevent other boats running into them, and Jack located the food supplies. Remember that celebration picnic Fox promised us, he said, arranging a banquet of cheese, salami, tortilla chips, and cans of Coke. Well, here it is. Cheers, Emily said, raising her can of Coke. She was starting to revive now that the cold water bottle was numbing her ankle, and she knew they were safe. She broke off a piece of cheese and fed it to Drift. Of course, we'll be drinking out of expensive crystal glasses soon. On our private plane, Jack put in, clinking his can against Emily's in a toast. And flying to our palace on a tropical island, Scott added, dipping his tortilla chips into a jar of spicy salsa. Jack raised his Coke can again. Here's to the Psycho Fox. At least he hauled that chest halfway to the boat for us. I hope he's enjoying his day on Gulliver's Island. Scott nodded. Yeah, I was so tempted to forget to tell the Coast Guard about him and leave him locked in a cell all night. Emily grinned. I suppose we will have to hand the gold over to the police. No way. Jack had a much better idea. We'll sail off into the night instead, before the Coast Guard finds us. We've got the gold. We're millionaires. We can do anything. He pictured himself wandering onto the veranda of his palace, glancing down at the row of shiny sports cars parked among the palm trees. Should he go for a swim in his Olympic-sized infinity pool, or test out his new bike on the custom-built indoor BMX track? Decisions. Let's splice the mainsail, raise the anchor, and run with the wind. Jack had no idea what any of that meant, but it sounded good. Scott and Emily were shaking their heads. We were only joking, Emily said. We have to hand it in. What? Jack asked in a small voice. All of it? Yes, all of it, Emily told him. Otherwise, we're no better than Simon Fox. And, Scott pointed out, if we stole the gold, we'll be on the run for the rest of our lives. Jack thought that sounded quite fun, but he could see he wasn't winning the argument. He sighed and took a gold coin out of his pocket and placed it on the table. I guess I'll have to wait for my reward. Suddenly a voice boomed out over the waves. This is the Coast Guard. I think our reward is getting rescued, Emily laughed. We might get a hot chocolate if we're lucky. One more chapter to go. We'll see what happens to the Fateful 3 tomorrow. Take care.